if your piece of content is primarily offer driven, your cost per customer acquisition will be the lowest. If your piece of content is primarily brand driven or educational, meaning you're creating an educational post or your lead magnet, whatever it is, your cost per customer acquisition is going to be substantially higher.
Welcome to Pipelineology, the business-to-business podcast for agencies, consultants, coaches, and businesses looking to build a pipeline of hot prospects ready to buy their products and services. Never wonder where your next client is coming from. To learn more about our strategies, services, and for resources on building your sales pipeline, visit pipelineology.com. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pipelineology. I'm your host, Gary Ruplinger, and today I am pleased to be joined by the Sold with Webinars podcast host, the Experts Unleashed podcast host, and founder of the webinar agency, Mr. Joel Erway. Joel, welcome to the show.
Gary, it's great to be here, man.
I am excited to have you on today. I've got lots of questions for you. So before I get into all of those, though, for anybody who is not a regular listener of your podcast or isn't familiar with you, could you just give a little bit about your background, your story?
Love to. Thanks for asking. So my name is Joel Erway. I run the webinar agency I founded and run the webinar agency, as you already mentioned. And my podcast is called Sold with Webinars. It is my outlet to share all things marketing and sales related in this industry. So I primarily work with coaches, consultants, service providers, and I like to just riff on all topics marketing related. I got started in this industry in 2014, 2015. I say this industry, I'm specifically referring to digital marketing. Prior to 2014, I was in the sales engineering world. And I had 5 years of experience giving sales presentations to my market. So in terms of marketing and sales, I've got probably 10 or 11 years of professional experience with this topic. So that's kind of the short of it. I don't know if you want me to go into any more details, but
so you started as an engineer, correct?
I did. So educated in the world in the field of mechanical engineering, and lasted about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer than that, in like pure engineering. And I just realized it wasn't something that I enjoyed, at least that type of design. I was working for a commercial heating and cooling engineering firm. So we would design heating and cooling systems for office buildings, schools, hospitals, you name it. And I very quickly transitioned into sales engineering, where I was selling and designing the equipment that my former colleagues were working on. And I enjoyed that a lot more. Just a lot, more exciting, more fast-paced, and that fits my personality a bit more. And so I did that for about 5 years before I went into the world of entrepreneurship.
Oh, excellent. And I've listened to some of how you kind of got started with webinars. I think you mentioned that you got started with Russell Brunson, saying that you were the guy to talk to if somebody needs a webinar.
Yeah. So I've worked with Russell a couple of times. He's a customer of mine, and I was part of his coaching program, one of his coaching programs, and his masterminds. So this is back in the day. It was really 2015. He was the first thing that I joined when I was looking to level up my game, and so I had a course that I was trying to promote, I was trying to sell, and I didn't really know anything about digital marketing at the time. So I joined his mastermind, and he told everybody in that coaching program, he still tells people to this day, that you need to run a webinar. And so once he told me I needed to run webinars, I'm like, okay, well, I can probably figure that out pretty easily. I've been doing sales presentations for a while. I get the gist of it. And so, I learned his methodology, his perfect webinar formula. I put my spin on it, did it to the way that I prefer to do it. And I started having success. I ended up quickly transitioning to helping other people with their webinars. My course was selling, but it wasn't like taking off as fast as I as I'd wanted. I ended up actually ran out of marketing dollars to promote that webinar. And so I started helping other people on the side in the coaching program with their webinars, and we were just crushing it with their stuff. I say, if I know now, if I know what I know, if I knew then about selling courses and marketing, what I know now, I would have stuck with my course, because I was really close to knocking it out of the park. I mean, I was like really, really close. But you don't know what you don't know, and I ended up helping a couple other people crush it with their webinars, and that was the launch of the webinar agency for me. I mean, I ended up just having faster success and better success helping other people with their webinars, and so I decided to launch an agency.
Oh, that's very cool. So I guess perhaps the kind of question in everybody's mind then is we're recording this, it's getting towards the end of 2020. Should everybody still be running a webinar?
Yeah. So what I say with webinars is they've got their place in the marketing and sales world. You go back to 2014, 2015, webinars are very hot. They're still hot right now. And when I say webinars, I'm referring to the traditional, hour to 2 hour long webinar. You give some content, you educate your audience, and at the end you make an offer, whether it's, hey, buy my program or buy this product, or hey, if you want to work more intimately, let's schedule a call. So those are the two typical calls to action that you can make at the end of the webinar. And 2015, 2016, and even heading into 2017, that was our primary focus, were these 1 to 2 hour long webinars. And they're a lot of work developing the right offer, developing the content. I mean, I tell people that a great long form webinar is like the holy grail of marketing. It's also the most difficult thing that you can get right in the world of digital marketing. And so there's a time and place for long form webinars, but in 2016 we had discovered and invented this new process called a mini webinar, and it all came about because our own webinar that we were promoting for our high ticket programs, high ticket services, was not converting well, and it was pretty embarrassing. And so, we had this webinar running for our $8,000 group coaching program and our $25,000 done for you services. And it was costing us, anywhere between $400 to $450 per phone call that we would generate. And if you have ever run paid traffic and you've ever run an application funnel, that's very, very high. Now, we were still profitable, but it just wasn't scalable. I mean, it was requiring a lot of risk for us up front to make a sale, here and there down the road. And I needed to find a better way to bring in leads, because it was, we were fine, but I needed to find a more predictable way to generate business. And so I was laying in bed one night, staring at the ceiling fan. We had just moved into our dream home. Our first child was born, and this new house was 3 times the size and 3 times as expensive as our previous home. So our expenses tripled. We have a new mouth to feed, and I'm stressing out because my wife's not working. I'm the sole provider, and I don't have a predictable source of leads coming in the door. So, I remember I was reading this book. It was called How to Create an Irresistible Offer by Bob Bly. And I was reading all sorts of marketing and sales books. And this book, I started reading it. I was laying in bed. I was staring at the ceiling fan. And on like page 3 or 4, I opened it up and there's this chart. And this was like the big aha moment that I had, that explained to me why we had, scarce leads, why we were struggling to generate leads. Now, Bob is a technical writer, so very smart guy and great copywriter, but his voice can be a little bit dull in terms of writing and a little bit complex. So he writes this chart, which is the cost per customer acquisition depending on the type of content that you put out. And it was this chart comparing brand-driven content versus offer-driven content. And essentially what he was saying was, if you put out a piece of content or an ad or a post, whatever it is, if your piece of content is primarily offer driven, your cost per customer acquisition will be the lowest. If your piece of content is primarily brand driven or educational, meaning you're creating an educational post or your lead magnet, whatever it is, your cost per customer acquisition is going to be substantially higher. And that chart revealed everything to me because it was like, okay, great. I'm running a long form webinar. It doesn't convert very well, and it's very much an education based sales mechanism, meaning I get somebody to raise their hand, say, yes, I want to learn about your webinar topic. They attend the webinar. They watch for 60 minutes. And at the end of that presentation, I make a call to action. So it's very educational based content. And when I saw that chart, I realized that what I needed to do is if I wanted to lower my cost per customer acquisition, I needed to do the exact opposite of what he was, I needed to follow what he was talking about in the exact opposite of what I was doing. So what I was doing was all educational based content marketing. And what I needed to start doing was offer driven content, meaning I needed to get more people to see my offer rather than at the end of this hour-long presentation, I needed to put it right front and center. And if I did that, theoretically, my cost per customer acquisition should be significantly lower. And I jumped out of bed because I said, this is going to work. Like, this makes so much sense. Like, I'm over educating my market right now. Not enough people are seeing my offer. That's why my lead flow is so dry. And so I ran downstairs. I remember opening up my laptop and typing up what is now the first draft of what I call a power offer. And I said, I'm going to publish this on Facebook. I'm going to close my laptop. I'm not going to check it until the next day. And we'll see what happens. So I published that power offer. And the very next day I had, I remember I had 2 people sign up for my $25,000 service, and my cost per lead or my cost per application dropped from $400 to $450 to less than $40 per application that very next day. So I dropped by 90%. And this was really the birth of power offers and mini webinars. So I know that was kind of long and drawn out. Hope I didn't lose you, but that's the birth of what we're talking about here today.
That is great. So you went from $450 to $40 calls on a $25,000 offer.
Yeah, I had a couple offers that I made on that call, depending on what type of fit they were, but anywhere from $8,000 to $25,000, 100%.
Wow, that is amazing. So, well, I'm sure that definitely has some people's attention now. So, I guess the question is, how does this work? How do we put together something like this? If you're a service provider, a course creator, a consultant, for your higher ticket offerings where a traditional webinar isn't working.
Yep. So, with a traditional based webinar, it's an educational based marketing system. So it's the typical Gary Vaynerchuk approach, right? Jab, 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 right hook, where it's content, value, 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 then you make an offer, right? Well, this is the exact opposite. Where I see most people failing, where I see most business owners struggling is they get stuck in the content marketing hamster wheel. They get stuck in I gotta provide tons and tons of value. I need to build a list. Then later on down the road, these people will buy from me. And while that may happen, it likely will not happen for you that way. Because what people do not get right and what people fail to get right immediately is they need to get their offer right. The offer trumps everything. And I mean everything. There is nothing more important in your business than an offer that converts, and getting someone to say, yes, I want you to help me with that. Yes, I want what you have to offer. And you do not need to provide any sort of educational value in order to get those first yeses. Now, if you have read, Chet Holmes in his book, The Ultimate Sales Machine, talks about the buyer's pyramid. And basically what it says is, in any given market, 3% of your audience is ready to buy right now. 6 to 7% of the people who in your audience are considering making a buying decision right now. And basically, so that's your top 10%. And the rest of your 90%, there's different phases, but they're more in the, hey, give me some sort of education first before I make a decision. And so many of us can go after that top 3 to 10% of the market who's ready to buy right now if we just make a compelling offer. Like they're ready to make a yes or no decision right now. And so this whole theory of leading with the offer first, then give them marketing, rather than doing the opposite, which is give them education first and then make an offer, it changes the game for us. Because what we need, if we're struggling with leads, we need to make more offers. And so as I launched that power offer, I needed to develop kind of a more systematic approach for turning this into an actual lead generation machine. And so the way that I developed it is, it's offer-based approach first, and then we give them a little bit of just like need to know education based on what we have to offer. And so we start out with a power offer, and that power offer is that kind of like 1 to 2 sentence statement that says, here's what I have. Do you want it? Yes or no? And so going back to that first night where I created that first draft of the power offer, I was looking to build more webinars for clients. And so I quite literally drafted this power offer that said, hey, and I'm probably going to butcher it here, but here's the gist of it. It said, hey, if you're a coach, consultant, or course creator, if I offered to develop a high converting webinar for you in the next 24 hours, guaranteed to convert, so you don't have to figure out what to say or how to say it, would you take me up on that offer? And that simple statement right there is the power offer. And if you're listening right now, you need to develop your own power offer and get somebody to say yes or no, either internally or externally. Like as they're reading it, you want them to internally like have that yes or no decision to say, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not. And if they say no, that's totally fine. But you want somebody to actually have to say, yes, I'm interested in that. And so I developed that power offer, and I published that as a post. I published that as an ad. And I had a slew of people raising their hands saying, yes, let's talk, right? And so that is the first step in your funnel. Now, once you get somebody to kind of raise their hand and say yes, then a lot of times you will need to give them a little bit more information. So we have developed what we call now, 10 to 15 minute long mini webinars, which, still reinforce the offer, but then kind of back into the need to know information. Like, okay, cool. Well, how can you do that offer? Like, how are you able to fulfill on that offer? What makes you different than anyone else who's making similar claims or similar promises? And so we structure a mini webinar to answer that question specifically. And when you do that correctly, you get people who are pre-sold on your offer. So you don't have to do strategy sessions anymore. Anybody who's in here listening right now, strategy sessions are a thing of the past with how I run my enrollment calls, because I have never been a fan of strategy sessions. I think they prove to be ineffective, and we can really eliminate them entirely. And so you pre-sell, when you do these mini webinars and these power offers, you pre-sell the prospect and you get them ready to make that yes or no buying decision with you on the phone without you having to do any sort of, fancy sales tactics. And so really that's it. It's power offer to mini webinar to enrollment call. Basically it's a Q&A call. And we do this to sell, high ticket offers, and we're from $1,000 to $30,000. We've done everywhere in between.
Well, that's awesome. So I think the question then, I think that probably a lot of people are thinking is, well, if I've got these high ticket offerings, usually this is, to somebody who has the ability to afford it, which usually means they're busy. Will busy people watch or attend a mini webinar?
Yeah, it's a great question, because that's really the other part of this whole coin. That's the other side of this whole coin, was that when I was running my old long form webinar and I really started to think about it, I started to realize that there are two universal currencies that all business owners have. It's number one is money, right? That's the one currency that most people think about, but the other is time. And your high ticket buyer who has more money than time does not want to sit through an hour-long webinar presentation, because that's actually costing them money to sit through that presentation. And so I started to really think about it. I'm like, okay, well, if I've got a high ticket offer, somebody's willing to part with more money in order to save time, I need to develop a sales funnel that aligns with their universal currency of time. And so I need to shorten down my sales funnel because they value their time more than they value their money if I have a high ticket offer for them. And so that was kind of the other aha moment. They are more likely to watch a 10 to 15 minute long mini webinar presentation than they are a 60-minute presentation, because they don't want to have to sit through the, the fluff that that a lot of these webinars typically have.
I'm getting excited now listening to, the kind of opportunities here. And I think, some of the other things you kind of touched on here is that this doesn't just have to be to a warm audience that knows you, right? I think the idea behind a power offer is that you can do this as an ad funnel, paid ads, Facebook, YouTube, all that kind of thing. Am I understanding that correctly?
100%. I mean, when we're working with clients, or we've got students in our coaching programs, everybody wants new leads. Everybody wants cold traffic. And so, yes, this was designed for cold traffic. Later on down the road, yes, you might need to build out some more marketing funnels and some more systems to help warm up your audience. But like, until you're at $20,000 to, let's say, $30,000 per month, all you need to do is start to validate your offer and get your offer in front of as many people as possible. And that's why we developed this power offer funnel. And this mini webinar funnel is to do just that, get you from, zero. You might have business coming in from, organic or referrals or networking. When I say zero, I mean from paid traffic. Like, you need to get that predictable pipeline coming in, and going from zero to say $20,000 per month or $30,000 per month with paid traffic. All you need is the right offer and this simple power offer mini webinar funnel.
So do you have any, insights on how to craft, if somebody says, I'm interested in this, is there anything you can kind of tell somebody if they're looking to do this? What does a mini webinar look like? How is that put together? Because I think most people are pretty familiar with the long form. Mm-hmm. What goes into a mini webinar to make it effective?
So the core questions that you want to ask yourself, and you want to come up with a good answer for when you're developing your mini webinar, is number one, you want to make sure that number one, you're repeating your promise and your power offer, meaning like right away. Like, if you want to have a pre-selling funnel, which is how this is designed, it's not a lead generation funnel, to be very clear, it's a sales funnel. And a sales funnel attracts buyer leads. So people who are ready to make a yes or no purchasing decision on that enrollment call, right? It's not a, hey, let me get more information call. It's no, I've got all the information. Now let's just make sure this is the right fit for me. Okay. So it's more of a Q&A call. So this is a sales funnel. And if you want to make sure that you develop the right sales funnel, then your messaging has to be congruent with speaking in a sales conversation. So your mini webinar needs, number one, it needs to lead with your offer again. So it needs to repeat your power offer promise, right? So if I offered to do X, Y, and Z, would you take me up on that offer, right? So that has to be reiterated like right at the beginning of your mini webinar. The other questions that you have to answer are, number one, how am I different? If you want to really separate yourself and get the maximum price for your products or services, you have to come up with a unique differentiator, right? Unique mechanism is what Todd Brown calls it. So like, how do you separate yourself from your competition? Do you have a methodology that you follow? Do you have a unique delivery system for how you deliver your promise? Whatever that is, this is your opportunity to set yourself apart and get them to be like, oh, okay, I want that, right? Ultimately, that's what we want to do, is we want them to say, Joel or Gary, I want a power offer, or Joel or Gary, I want a mini webinar, right? Those are some of my unique mechanisms, my unique methodologies that once they start to buy into that, then I know they're bought in hook, line, and sinker, right? So developing those unique mechanisms, those unique methodologies and unique delivery systems, that is really where we spend a lot of our time focusing on inside of a mini webinar, right? So A traditional webinar, you still give some sort of educational content, like, hey, here's what needs to happen, right? And so the reason why we call them mini webinars is we do still give a little bit of educational information, and we do that in the form of what are the steps that we are going to be taking you through to achieve whatever the end result that we are promising you to receive. So whether that's 3 steps or 4 steps, like, we are outlining that inside of our mini webinar too. So the main things that we have to focus on in this mini webinar are, number 1, repeating our power offer promise. Number 2, what makes us different. And number 3, what is the process that somebody has to go through to achieve the end result? What is the high level process? Like, how can you break that down and distill that into 3 steps, 3 or 4 milestones, so they understand these are my expectations if I were to work with you, Gary, if I were to work with you, Joel, right? And if you get them to understand that, and by the end of it saying, yes, I want that, meaning, yes, I want a power offer, yes, I want a mini webinar, then you don't have to do any selling, because they've already been sold. They've already convinced themselves that this is exactly what they want. Now, the only thing they need answered is, will this work for me? Gary, let's hop on the phone. I want you to tell me that this will work for my specific situation. So that's really, in a nutshell, what we focus on.
That's brilliant. Do you have any other numbers you could perhaps share with people, just to kind of give them an idea of some of the transformational value of this, of industries you've worked in?
We've worked in tons of industries. I mean, it's hard to say all of them, because it literally goes all across the board, from, biz op to coaches to health and wellness to relationships. I mean, we go across the gamut, and like, the sales process is all the same, right? I had a client who is in the geek dating niche. Now, I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. That's how she refers to them, right? So she calls herself the geek whisperer. She's amazing, and she has the same process out for attracting coaching students to help them find a dating partner. And so, in terms of numbers, I just broke down 7 mini webinars, 7 of my clients and my students' mini webinars, and I uploaded it in the membership area. And the average cost per sale of I think everybody was selling at least a $5,000 program. One of them might have been selling a $3,000 program. One was selling a $15,000 program. So on average, let's just say the median price was $5,000. We had, I think, 3 out of the 7 that I reviewed had a cost per sale of like $130 per high ticket sale. One person, my $15,000 offer, it was costing her about $2,000 to make a $15,000 sale, and we've since optimized her funnel as well. We had another guy who was making, he's at $50,000 per month right now, with his $5,000 offer, and he's in the personal development space. And we had a couple other people who were spending, I think, $350 to make a $5,000 sale. So the numbers are across the board, but our bare minimum ROI for these funnels is 4x return on ad spend. Like, if we're not hitting 4x return on ad spend, we're doing something wrong. And so we know that our power offer promise, likely it's our power offer promise. Because if you get a dialed in power offer, like, you really don't need anything else to sell it. You'll get people to raise their hand and want to hop on the phone with you. It's pretty incredible. So, I mean, those are some numbers that we have recently with our clients.
Those are some pretty amazing numbers. Well, I know I could talk about this, for the next 2 days, but I know we both have things to go do. So if anybody is kind of interested in exploring this further with you, they want to look into, power offers, mini webinars, where should we send them?
First place they can go is they can head to my website, joelerway.com. That's JOELERWAY. That's kind of my central hub for everything that we've got going on. We've talked a lot about power offers, and we do have a workshop that people can attend. It's a paid workshop, but it's probably the single most popular product that we have out there right now. It's a $37 workshop that shows you how to craft your own 1 to 2 sentence power offer. We've had people make as much as $20,000 in 2 days from this workshop, just launching these power offers to their own internal audience. And so for $37, you can go to powerofferworkshop.com. That's powerofferworkshop.com. And they can take the first step and learn how to craft that power offer.
Well, that's great. And I can speak firsthand to how good that is. Well worth the investment. It will give you a great ROI. Pretty much within a week or two if you implement it. I know I certainly did. So, Joel, anything else somebody should know before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, we covered a lot. If they want to check out my podcast as well, they can search for that on soldwithwebinars.com. That we're switching domain providers for where that was previously hosted. So if you go to it right now and it's down, we are working on it, but you can just search for Sold with Webinars on iTunes or Spotify and find the podcast that way. But it's been great, Gary. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate it, Joel. Take care. And I really, really appreciate you sharing today.
You got it.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Pipelineology podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to seeing you on the next one. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.